Never use our bare hands, obviously, as potters do, but this gets us close. Does anybody know what material that tool is made from? It's paper. It's newspaper. Folded up, wet newspaper. We take plenty of sheets, more than one piece of paper. That would be a bad idea. That one's about 7 or 8 sheets, folded over several times. That is a lot of layers when it's all put together. Keep it wet, just a little water from time to time, and that turns to steam. It stops the paper and the glass from sticking. But that's about as close as we can ever get to using our bare hands. It doesn't last very long. Some tools are good for life, some tools last for a couple years. This one about 1 week. Because wet paper, when you do this, it begins to turn to mush and fall apart. This is still good though. Probably another few days easily out of that one. One of the most important things for glass blowing is heat. We have a way to reheat our piece using this secondary oven. So this one is empty. Unlike the melting furnace that's got a big ceramic pot full of glass ready to go, that's just a barrel on its side with a series of doors. Now it's powered with electricity, which is actually very rare. Most glass studios use combustion, but this is an all-electric design. Lisa's gonna create optics. She presses into an aluminum optic mold that has 12 points. And these pieces down here, this vase, that platter, even that bowl, most of these items really have optics of some sort in them. This bowl has optics that were twisted after the fact, so you can do quite a bit to play around with the pattern. I think she might leave these running straight though. We'll see. Now we want to start the inflation, and it's actually very easy to inflate that bubble larger. At this temperature, really soft. So when she blows through the pipe now, gentle breaths of air. That's really all it takes. You can easily overdo it. If you blow really hard, it'd be a dynamic display of how soft glass is. But if it goes really thin, it just collapses on itself. So we're pretty careful not to do that. Now, many people inquire about why we're not wearing gloves. Surely some people are asking themselves that right now, right? Stainless steel is what our pipes and rods are made from. Now, I think you can guess where you don't want to grab, right? That dark and tarnished area is extremely hot, but stainless just doesn't transfer heat as well as most metals. So it makes it ideal for our purposes. This is preheated to about 1,000 degrees, so the glass will stick to it, but I can comfortably hold right here. So there's definitely a zone you don't want to put your hand in, but that's why we can work barehanded, and we actually prefer to be barehanded because we like all that dexterity, to be able to use our hands, our fingers, our fingertips even, to help us turn and to feel the tools and all of that. Gravity can be a great tool. So if we hold the bubble towards the ground or sometimes up in the air, we're using gravity to our favor and stretch the glass or let it settle on itself. Now this is one of the most useful tools in glass blowing. From afar, they probably look like tongs. A lot of people say, what's that tong tool? But these are called jacks, and I'll show you another set of those in a moment. I won't grab the pair that she's using. We do have a variety of these up here, but jacks are 2 blades. They're not really sharp. If you're to run your finger down, it's kind of like a butter knife. And they work really well with beeswax applied to them. That wax heats up and it becomes very slippery, so it's a lubricant. Because if you're doing what she was doing and it was just bare metal, they scratch and they kind of catch a little bit, create a lot of friction. So a bit of beeswax applied to them. But you probably see Elise use the jacks quite a bit. They're such a useful item. In fact, their most important job is this. We squeeze the blades together now to form a constriction called a jack line, and that's a break-off point. So we need to prep to remove the bubble eventually, and when the time comes, we have to break the glass free. We want to have a nice spot to do so. Has anybody here broken glass before? It's very easy to break glass, right? Glass loves to break, but it generally breaks very unpredictably. You break a window, you're not going to get a nice straight line, most likely. So we need to determine that the glass will break in a straight line, and that's why we really focus on that constriction. Pretty important. All right, now once she gets everything set up to the right profile, we're gonna add a little bit of glass to make the base, or the foot as we call it. So let's use this piece as an example. Same kind of profile going on. When you look at this piece as it stands upright, envision that this part, the outer edge, was closed down and attached to a blowpipe. So it also means that when we're at the bench, everything is sideways. So minus the top and minus the stem and the foot, we can see a similar kind of thing happening, right? Now, the first part to be completed is the bottom of a form. because the top needs to be removed from the blowpipe to do so. So once the bottom is shaped up, in this case we're going to add some glass in a moment, we'll work on the top. So a little bit more about our pipe warmer over here. This is also an electric oven. It heats these up. It's at about 1250 right now, but you have to preheat the metal to get the glass in the furnace to stick properly to it. Ready for that? Okay. Now, any glass left on the end of a rod or a pipe, we put it into this bin, and as glass cools quickly, thermal shock sets in and the glass cracks and pops off at the end. So if you hear some popping or pinging coming from over here, that's what's going on. Okay, she's ready to add the foot. So I gather up. Now I'm going to get very close to the bubble for Elise, and then my job will just be to go really loose-handed, let her grab a hold and do the rest. So watch this. Very fluid. You can see how the glass gets so thin, the heat just melts it away. But there's not a lot of weight to that, but it is enough that it will just kind of continue to dribble to the floor. So just like honey. All right, a little fancy sculpting with the tweezers. Tweezers are kind of like this for glass blowers. They're our thumb and forefinger. So if we want to do any pinching or grabbing and pulling, tweezers are an excellent tool. All right, so we work together now to create the very bottom profile. I'm just holding a dry paddle on the very edge, making sure that it's level. She gives it a nice taper flare with the jacks. There's times that you absolutely need to have water on the wooden tools, and there's times you don't. It depends on how hot the surface of the glass is. So straight from the furnace, the wood has to be wet. But after tooling that foot a little bit, it lost a lot of that molten heat, so dry wood can be used. And in fact, at times, if you use a little water on a tool and the glass isn't quite hot enough to turn the water to steam, you'll crack the glass. So we have to be very conscious of thermal shock. We're going to use it in a moment, thermal shock. We're going to transfer that piece over to what I'm making, called a punty. So this is what we'll attach to the foot. And once we have this in place, we're going to shock that constriction. So we can use thermal shock to our advantage. Now, as I'm creating the punty, Elise is taking a couple quick reheats. We call that a flash, and that is to maintain temperature so nothing gets too cold. And we don't look with temperature reading devices. We don't have thermometers up here or infrared vision. But with enough experience, you start to understand temperature management, how to keep the glass at the right heat without it breaking. So punty's attached. She's lining it up nicely with a blowpipe. That's important. That'll keep our center. And here's a little bit of water, creating tiny cracks. And now we follow it up with a sharp tap on the pipe. Look at that. Let's give her a big round of applause. That was perfect. And I waste no time. I get right back up to this oven. You don't want the piece to cool any more than necessary. There you go. Now, if you've been looking at the screens and questioning what type of camera did those guys have inside the furnace, the real question is what type of window does the camera look through? Camera's not in that oven. That oven is running at about 2200 Fahrenheit. No camera I know could survive that. There is a type of glass that can. It's called fused silica. Now, silica sand is the main ingredient to any glass in the world. What we have here is called soda lime. That's a very common type. Silica sand with soda ash and limestone mixed together. That forms what's called batch, and this is what our batch looks like. We shovel this into that furnace at night, because this takes a bit of time. It's gonna melt into glass, but that's what it turns into, is this clean, clear soda lime glass. Now that fused silica window in the back of the oven, it's basically pure silicon dioxide. And on its own has a melting temp almost 4,000 Fahrenheit. So that oven is not nearly hot enough to do any damage to it. Now let's say you want to work with color. It's too late for her piece, it's already been blown up too large or too thin. But this little jar has green frit inside of it. It's crushed colored glass. Now to make the color, you take batch and you add metal oxides, metal chlorides, or metallic salts. So this little jar has iron oxide, also known as rust. This would give us the green glass. Cobalt gives us blue, manganese purple, copper teal blue, gold chloride for the pinks and rubies. So there's a lot of chemistry that goes into making colored glass. And if you have time today, I highly suggest checking out an exhibit that's temporary. It opened a few weeks ago called Brilliant Color. It's located in our 35 Centuries Gallery. Takes a deep dive into color, its development in glass and the world of glassmaking. There's things like uranium glass in there. There's dichroic, there's iridescent, there's color shifting glass, whether it's under UV or fluorescent light, changes its color. It's wild. It's really, really cool. But it's a great exhibit. Well, back to Elise. She's reheated, re-softened the opening. She's stretching it a little bit. She's gonna trim some glass off the edge. Very easy to cut through. As long as it's hot, as long as it's soft. Now we can take those scraps and remelt them, and if they're clear and clean, we do. And I just want to show you. She just easily cut through this. It has the tiniest bit of movement to it still, but it's pretty much too stiff to do anything with now. So if you tried cutting it now, it would just dull your shears. In fact, just seconds later, it broke into pieces. But remember, glass blower cold is a little different. Just a little water squirt on there. You can hear it popping. So that's a pretty aggressive way to thermally shock glass. Air cooling will do the same type of thing, and that's why glass has to be annealed. So that's a slow cooling process. A piece like this takes about 8 hours. So the oven right behind our bench, that's holding just below 1,000 degrees, where our glass is stable. We put all the work into that, and that has a program in it. We run it at the end of the day. So everything inside that oven will slowly come down to room temperature together. That is based on how thick something is. So thin work like this, 8 hours is fine. If you make a really massive, thick piece, it can take days, weeks, even months to properly anneal. And when you exit our theater here, if you look over that direction to your left, you'll see the top of a very giant disc. It was cast here in Corning in the 30s, meant to be used in Mount Palomar, the observatory out west in California. That object weighs over 40,000 pounds. One singular object that weighs 20 tons took 11 months to anneal. Imagine that. That's a pretty long time to wait. But look at this. Elise has heated and opened it just by turning. So we can use not just gravity, but rotation. Rotation can be a very valuable tool. A little fine tuning, opening a bit more and changing the curve with the jacks. And I think she said she wanted to add a couple handles to this too. Well, I'm going to start one of those. All right. So I'm going to jump in and bring a gatherer glass over, not like we did for the foot. We want the handle to be quite not as hot. We're looking for more like a clay kind of consistency. So I'm going to use this metal table. This is called a marver. And I'm going to roll this bit of glass into a cylinder shape. As I'm shaping, the metal is pulling heat from the glass as well. So we can use it as a heat sink. All right, I got a pretty good shape, Elise. She's taking those flash heats, just making sure everything stays away from that thermal shock zone. Again, it's a guessing game. It really is. We're estimating temperatures and timing. But with enough experience, you start to estimate well. Okay, we get close, go loose-handed yet again. Let her do all the steering. She'll crimp with a very interesting type of shear. I'll show you what those look like in a moment. And then she cuts with a straight shear. And she wants to scroll this. So she uses some tweezers and she just kind of pinches and curls it and makes it beautiful, a little detail. What do you guys think? Nice job. Let's give it up for Elise. She's doing a really good job with this. Now we want to match another handle. And it's important when we're putting multiples onto a piece that we're consistent. So I do my best to gather up the same amount, as close to it as I can. Get the same shape, the same setup, same temperature, all that. Obviously there'll be slight variations, but if I'm consistent, then it should act the same way when she puts it on. But again, those flash heats, that's what we call the heat she's taking. It's not to soften anything, it's simply maintaining enough heat throughout the whole form. Okay, I'll be ready for you. I give it a little extra heat, make sure it's soft all the way through. But again, the same moves for her. Now the shear she has right now, these are called diamond shears, and I'll show you what the blades look like in a moment. There's no diamonds in them, it just refers to the blade pattern. They're good for this though, that crimp. That's really what they're useful for. But then she cuts with the straight shears to make it a point. And that's useful for this scrolling move. It's a tricky little move to do in itself, but nicely done. Beautiful. Now, chances are most people at home have something that look like this, right? Straight shears are good for cutting paper, cardboard, thin plastic, even thin strips of leather. Does anybody have those? No, not unless you're a glass blower. I can't think of any useful application. But that blade pattern, that diamond shape, so they're perfect for crimping, and then you can even cut with them, and they leave a tiny cut mark, unlike straight blades. So it really depends on what you're after. But a very useful glass blowing tool. Okay, final step, get it off the punty into our annealer for safe and slow cooling, a little bit of water to shock that connection. Once you do this, you gotta be very careful not to bump the rod until you get the tool under it, because all it takes is a tiny tap to do it. Beautiful job. So away this will go, safe and sound. And we give Elise one more big round of applause. Great work. Nicely done. Folks, that is going to conclude this demonstration. I want to thank you all very much for coming to see us. Again, if you have time, check out Brilliant Color. It really is worth it. But we're open till 5 o'clock, so you got lots of time. Enjoy it. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.